What's going on, folks? It's your boy Javier Javier with the Javier Javier Show. Make sure you say it twice. I got a special edition with the Javi Lobby. I got a few of my subscribers, different backgrounds, different political leanings, and I just thought it would be great to get them all together, people from different backgrounds and different experiences, to talk about America in 2020. So I'm going to allow them to introduce themselves, and we finna get this party started. How y'all doing?
I do great, Javier. Thank you so much. I'm very grateful to be here, and I want to share my gratitude with everyone who came to spend time here to try and work out society's problems. I am with the International Logic Party, USA, and I am suggesting myself as president, not because I want to be president, but I know that I could do better than what we currently have. I see the system as needing to either crumble or get somebody who has virtue and good in their heart to go in there and really make the fundamental changes that need to be made. If you ask me, that fundamental change would be to do a complete reset and stop allowing ourselves to be governed by the precepts of racists and hypocrites. Also, I'm in Carlisle, Pennsylvania. So I'm very grateful to meet you all, and I look forward to this discussion.
All right. Next.
My introduction isn't going to be as long. I'm a best friend of Javier Javier. Gotta say it twice. I'm Nadia, and I don't sit anywhere really politically. When I take my test, I guess I forgot what I was. That's how into politics I am. All I can do is give my logical opinion of whatever we're discussing, and I can debate whether I agree or disagree with everyone else's perspective and go from there.
Next.
I'm Mark Meltzer, and I'm from a little bit north of Boston. I'm married. I have 3 kids. I'm a professional combat sports coach. I'm Jewish. I have Jewish-seeking inclinations, and I lean more to the right, but I'm here to learn.
Awesome. Next in line, Scott.
Yeah, my name is Scott, and I'm in that same realm, Mark. I'm just here to learn. I generally lean more to the right, but listening to a few debates that Javier Javier was on got me thinking a little bit differently. So when I joined this Javier Javier or Javier Lobby, I thought this was a good opportunity. Had a couple quick talks with Javier through text and messenger, and said, hey, you want to join? So I was like, yes, let's do it.
Awesome. Cesare, you're up next.
Cesare from USA, but currently I'm in Poland. I'm representing the International Logic Party. That's our logo right behind me. Well, we teach people how to control their government. It's as simple as that. We have a whole new system of democracy that enables people to develop their own political philosophy out of various ideas, to show which ideas people support the most, and then to create new political candidates who actually represent the will of the people. Cynthia with us being a great example of that. She's one of our brave leaders. So I'm happy to discuss some interesting ideas and the future that we intend to be making in the USA in 2020 and well into the future. Thank you.
Awesome. Welcome, everyone. So today's subject, it's America and it's 2020. And with that being said, you already know it's a lot going on. We started with the coronavirus. We got the riots going on right now, a lot of racial tensions in America, a lot of people going left versus right, and we trying to figure this whole thing out. So what say ye? Who's up first?
I can go first.
All right, hit me with it.
I believe that we, the people, really need to start having conversations amongst ourselves. Like, we should be seeking out people who annoy us to find out why they annoy us, so that we can actually come to a fundamental understanding. And I also believe that the word conservative has been misinterpreted to the masses, so that those who are actually in power now can retain that power. And dude, I've been American my whole life. I know I can do better than this. If I can do it, any one of you all could do it. You know what I'm saying? So where are anybody but Biden and Trump? Like anybody.
Yeah, I hear a lot of people say vote blue no matter who. And I'm trying to understand the ideology for, like, there's a racial tension right now going on. And there's this narrative that police brutality is actually something that we deal with in America. Now, we can debate that issue as far as it actually being a true narrative or not. Is it overhyped or is it actually a real thing? Anybody want to, push back on that topic and kind of give their say?
Yeah, Javier, I've been thinking about this, and what I think is there are two issues that get meld together, and it causes confusion. And I'm thinking specifically about what's going on right now. I think there is a clear issue on police brutality, and there needs to be reform. There needs to be protesting. There needs to be an outcry. There needs to be all of these things in the name of police brutality. And then I think there's a separate issue of racism. It exists. We need to address it. There's many different ways you can address it. But when you bring those two together and don't compartmentalize these two issues, it's a very difficult problem to solve when you're trying to do both at the same time. And I think that when you separate them, and the media does a really great job of confusing a lot of folks in that they're all one issue, and it's not. In my view, there's two issues that are going on here.
Yeah, mate. Okay. Anybody else want to offer their input on that?
I want to say I completely agree with him. There are two separate issues that we're combining because of the majority of what the media is showing us is that there's white cops abusing black people. And yeah, that's a thing also, but there's also a thing where there are black cops abusing, or whatever word you want to choose to use, other black people. And I'm pretty sure it's vice versa. It's just what the media is actually showing us. But racism, the race issues, and the police brutality are definitely two separate issues that people are combining because certain similarities, and there's a lot of misunderstanding from certain types of mind frames. It's just, but it's definitely different issues.
Okay.
Let me just add one other piece to that, because what I'm thinking is that they're two separate issues, but it doesn't dismiss why people think they're the same, right? And I think there's ample reason of why people think they are the same. If you think about, and I'm obviously not black. I've never experienced it.
You sure?
But if you think about like what the image of that cop with his knee on that black person, and what the emotion that could, I don't know, but it could conjure, to me, that's real. That's not something that's easy to separate. And so I just don't want to dismiss the fact that when these two issues come together, it's not a simple, let's just divide these and solve them. I think you have to understand why people think they are the same and why they're confused.
Well, Mark, I want to get you in on this because you're Jewish, and I know you have you understand like the history behind oppression, and like how do you see it from your perspective?
Well, I got to tell you, there's some similarities, and I really wish that when my synagogue gets defaced and when their swastika is thrown up on certain walls and stuff, and the Jewish people come out, I wish everybody would come out, and I identify with that solidarity. I think there's always going to be bad apples in the mix wherever, and it's our job to expose them, and not necessarily, if they haven't done anything wrong yet, The idea is to turn them into good people, to let people have this ability to change the way they think if you put it to them in the right way. And I think if they don't know what they're doing, you know, in certain small instances, I think it's important that we turn them around. I've had guys, I remember this one guy, he came to my gym. He had a swastika right there on his neck, you know? He was a legit Aryan youth ex-warrior from what we talked for a while. I told him I was Jewish, the whole 9 yards and everything. And he wanted to make a change. So, you know, I think that's important. I think we got to change the people that don't have the right idea. And if they do something as egregious as some of these incidences that we've experienced, they need to be brought up on charges and they need to be out. They're not part of our community. That's not the American melting pot that I want.
Yeah, so when you bring up Nazi youth, that goes back into like a systematic racism that's built into a system that allowed the oppression of the Jewish people. Now, I know Cesare is working to reform the system and actually bring about a new way of politics. So, Cesare, exactly how much does politics play into this issue in America when it comes to oppression of people? Do you agree with the narrative? Do you see it as a systematic problem, something that can be fixed? Like, what say ye?
You know, this is so big. I'm not even sure where to begin. I'm more focused on the socioeconomic divide that exists in the country. You know, I think it's so economically rooted. I think when you empower the people to actually live quality lives, then they don't resort to crime, then there are less negative stereotypes about certain groups of people because they're not living at the poverty level, they're not doing all these things. So, well, here's one thing I've learned. People don't respect people, and people should not respect people. It actually doesn't make sense to respect people. You can love people, you can pity people, you can empathize with people, but respect is for power. What people respect is power, and as they should. That's, you know, the reason that you respect anybody is because they have some kind of power. You respect whether it's proficiency in some kind of skill, or whether, you know, it's political power, whether they're a good communicator, all of that. There are so many different forms of power. That's what people respect. That's what people acknowledge and kind of look up to and defer to, in a sense. And so what our system does is it actually empowers people, like politically. It gives people real power. And guess what? People start to actually respect each other a lot more. I think that the fact that people don't respect one another is a symptom of how little power those people actually have.
So are you saying that because Black people may have less power, or Jewish people may have less power in the country, therefore people respect them less, and therefore that plays into the whole systematic racism, which you're trying to correct for?
That, you know, that too, you know, you're talking about it from the racial perspective, you know, but you can look at that from, you know, here's an example. If you're going to have a meeting with the president, well, okay, maybe the current president is not a good example, but the point is, or I don't know, you're senator, maybe you have, well, there's, all right, basically somebody you don't hate. Let's just say it's a politician that's somebody you don't hate, right? But the point is that if you're going to have this person, you know, and they do have power in the current system, if you're going to have a meeting with them, you're going to respect them, because if you don't, then they're just going to show you the door. Sorry, you know, if you're going to
is it respect or decorum?
Respect or decorum. Well, that's a good question. You're complicated in the matter. You're really throwing a wrench into my example here. Let me think about it. Let me get back to you. Well, in a second. No, but
That's
the point
one thing
is,
about Facebook that's really good is that like when these kind of things come up, you can just walk away, think about it for a few minutes, and then come back. You know, that's cool.
well, right?
I
No,
respect that.
I'm going to think about it and come back. But the point is, what I'm trying to say is that if you don't respect that person, because they are the ones who have the power, they can walk away from you. And guess what? You don't get to meet with the president. You don't get to meet with the senator anymore because, you know, well, yeah. So but you're in that position of a lot less power. And so the point is if you empower people, people will respect each other a lot more. Um, it's because you simply do better business. If you start disrespecting people, they're less inclined to make a deal with you, make a compromise with you. They don't want to listen to the crap. They don't want to listen to you say bad things about them or whatever. Say,
So
degrade them anyway.
let me jump in for a second, because I haven't given my take yet. There's three issues, and I know we've touched on two. It's racism, it's police brutality, but the third one that I want to address is systematic racism. What's the difference between racism and systematic racism? Because I hear this word systematic racism thrown around a lot. And from what I understand, it's basically where the system is designed or set up in a way that it privileges white people over minority groups. And it may be intentionally and it may be not intentionally. And I want to see exactly, is there evidence for this, or are people conflating racist people with a racist system, or can both exist? And how do you begin to reform something like that?
Can I respond to the systematic race?
Go for it.
Cynthia pop up, so it threw me off a little bit. But systematically, if I'm correct on my thought process on it, I feel as if the system was designed for a grade of people to have a certain amount of income or to have a certain stature within the levels of society, and it doesn't benefit for how the minority is in the system. So it's kind of, if you want to say systematically racism, I mean, we can't use it now because Black people, people of the minority are able to make a certain income and fall out of that category. But in the beginning of it all, we were, as a minority, as a group of anybody within the minority, were like at the bottom anyway, started from the bottom. So it made it, as the system was being created and built, we automatically fell at the bottom. And so now some of us are in a position to where we can climb up out of that and fall in middle class, upper class. And then we have some still stuck in a generational mindset of not even knowing what there is outside of the environment that they're in. So they're complete products of it. And the majority of the people that are complete products of their environment are the so-called minority. So like, we're complete products of it. And some of us, like me and others, are mentally capable of seeing things outside of the environment that they were raised in. And we try to find things that we can do as far as jobs, income, however, to get the amount of money, since the system created money as that thing. We try to find things that we don't have knowledge of as a minority to get there and get out of the hole that we are stuck in. But mentally, we weren't raised with generations of that knowledge from the beginning of the creating of the system. Like, hey, we need to know finance, we need to know this, that, and the third. We're learning now in the past, 20, maybe 25, 30 years, that this is that we have to get our shit together, quote unquote, in order to be able to even be seen outside of what we're in. And also, it's hard if you don't. It's hard to have the
audience. Let's see. We got some older members here who lived. You know, me, you, we're still in our 20s, but we got some older members here. And based on what you was touching on, as far as where we started and where we are now, and just reaching a certain place where some of us can actually try to dig ourselves out of that hole. So, Cynthia, I want to hear from you first, and then maybe Scott, and then Mark next. How has things changed since you were young, since you were a kid? Have you seen any progress, and how are things different than the way they used to?
I have absolutely seen progress, but you had asked for an example, and I wanted to address that. The First Nation people are a perfect example of the cycle of systematic racism. We like, it's well documented that they were to be exterminated in the name of manifest destiny, and we forced them into a system that was designed to kill them. And when we all collectively decided that we didn't want to do that anymore, we left them in the same system that was designed to kill them. And it's the same thing with Black people. You were put into a system that was designed to suppress people. My God, you're governed by a document that doesn't even recognize you as a whole person. How is that going to resolve the paradox? You know what I'm saying? Like, this whole country was founded on this social paradox, and unless we get all of those precepts, we're going to follow the same cycle as every other empire has followed throughout history, going back to the 5th century as far as I can remember.
Okay, so I'm gonna let Scott touch on it, and then Mark, and then we're gonna kind of move into the conversation about how racist is America, because some people, and I may be included in that, don't think America is as racist as people portray it as. So, Scott, what say ye about where we've come since you were younger into 2020 today?
Well, I'll just tell you, to be very transparent. I grew up in New Orleans, and I grew up with a very racist family, and I didn't realize how racist they were until I left. And I've lived in multiple different cities, and I've been opened through the different geographies that I've lived in to see different people and how they act and how they behave and how they treat other people. And I don't know if it's a progression or if it's a geographical difference. I don't know. I don't have any data. My only experience is more geographical. I went from Louisiana to East Texas, from East Texas to Central Florida, from Central Florida to now in the Charlotte area. And I've seen progression. I've seen progression from the way people treat other people. The company that I work for values diversity to a very high standard. And that is something that I would have never expected as a young child growing up in the New Orleans area. The question I have for you, Javier, and Nadia, when you imply the system as the political system, or maybe you meant the economical system, or maybe some combination of both, but it's interesting to hear what system you're speaking about.
If I could respond to that, I mean, the political system, the amendment, before, at one point, the amendments, the financial system, the knowledge, the teaching, if we don't know it's out there to learn, we won't learn it unless you have people. Some of us have the mind to know, I don't know what it is in us, that there's more than what we are in. But there are some who whether it's generational turmoil within the family, they just don't have it. They don't have the knowledge. They're not.
You're kind of
It's
breaking up.
You were cutting out, Nadia, but I understand what you're saying. It makes complete sense. I agree. There's definitely an educational component there. You don't know what you don't know, and I agree with you.
Yeah, the only thing I'll say is that
but it's general.
yeah,
It's generational.
Nadia, your network is low.
Let me suggest that if you turn off your camera, your audio quality will probably improve.
Yeah. So I'll say this while she's getting that together. But what
Do that.
I will say is that there are elements. These things are very complicated. I would never reduce anything down to a single component. And what I will say is there is a combination of generational, pain that's been passed down from generation to generation. And people can't teach their children what they don't know because it was withheld from them. And therefore, we keep reinforcing it to the next generation. There's also a component of the lack of resources that people don't have access to get that extra knowledge that we need in order to actually move ourselves forward. But what I say, the system politically is racist. I don't think there's anything on the books that is being enforced besides criminal justice that actually disenfranchises Black people. And that goes back into police brutality. But as far as, there's been a lot of progress when it comes to actual getting rid of redlining, trying to integrate schools, trying to allow Black people opportunities that white people have. There's been a lot of progress there. And I think what we have to do is get more resources and get rid of the generational, mindset that's been passed on. And I think more and more people can see those opportunities and take advantage of them, in my opinion. Mark, you haven't spoken in a minute. You want to chime in?
So I was in elementary school in the 1970s. 1970s. So in my first grade class, which I had to take twice because I got kicked out of the first one. And then they actually brought in a Black man for us to see and talk to. Thinking about it now, it was absolutely bizarre. I grew up in Bangor, Maine. Way, way, way up there. You know what I'm saying? So that was like the introduction. And, I really didn't have too much of an education of what was going on until I started working as a head martial arts instructor at this gym. And it was a mixed couple who owned it. And they rented the gym out to teens every once in a while. And the husband was a Black guy. And he wanted me to come in so we could make sure that everything was cool. You know what I mean? Because they're just a bunch of high school kids. They're going to be going crazy, doing all their stuff inside the gym. And they're, it's just a high school graduation and stuff. And, there was a police detail there, and the police detail left because it was at the end of her shift. But he didn't want to close down. So she sent the entire police force to the gym. If I wasn't there, they would have, they were looking for any reason to take this guy in. Any reason. I felt it. I saw it. They were asking him all these questions. Him and we were drinking in the back. I knew that they were going in on him. And I refused to leave. They wanted to separate us. I wouldn't let it separate. There was something going on. And I'm convinced that, I am not privy to what you see, but I also know it's there. And when it rears its ugly head, there has to be a voice about it. And I think that what we're seeing right now is that voice. Now, it gets confusing because there's violence in there. We want to hear the voice, but some of the violence is just, it detracts from the message.
It's been
Okay,
hijacked. It's been hijacked.
It's been hijacked, and it's not fair, because the real message is the idea of equality. There is the whole system, and what we're being shown, I am not convinced it's just white cops against black citizens. I think that it's all over the place. But the only thing that we're being shown is white cops against black citizens, and that should be addressed. Now, don't take that apart. That absolutely has to be addressed in the way that I said. Either they need to be reformed people, or they need to be exposed and taken out, because it's always going to be there.
It's the training. It's the cop thing. It's the when you're a manager or you're over an establishment of people, you're supposed to know the character of these people. You're supposed to address certain things as a unit, as a system. Like, it's the teaching. It's the, like, police your police. You have to, if you're going to be over a police department, you need to be over your police officers. And it's a police thing. It's not the power thing. Like the other guy said, it's a power thing.
Cesare.
I'm sorry, Cesare, did you want to say something first?
Cesare just he chilling right now. What you was gonna say, Cynthia?
I would also say that much of the problem is the media, because they work for the people who want to control us. And I remember as a kid, there was a movie called Network, and it talked about how the news just sort of took over everything and essentially controlled everyone, which is very much like what we see today.
Yeah. So with the riots going on right now, the craziest thing, you know, some people are like police brutality, some people are like racism. And I keep getting this picture in my head of white people screaming at black police officers. And I'm like, this perfectly encapsulates exactly. It's
the
like
meme with that one woman who, it was a white woman giving the finger to like a bunch of black cops. I mean, like, come on, you know, I mean, that was just bizarre.
It was because they were cops.
Yeah. If I can also address Nadia's point, the policing themselves historically has not proven to be a good idea, and yet we still continue to do it. To my mind, after having watched that video, anything short of them putting handcuffs on that police officer to remove him from that gentleman's neck is a dereliction of duty and makes them complicit in his murder.
maybe they should have citizens that like sign up to monitor the police. They get the training. They teach them what the police are supposed to be doing, how they're supposed to be doing it. But they're an advocate for the citizens, so they can actually.
What would happen? What would happen if someone saw the guy said, "I can't breathe. I can't breathe." What if some citizen, whoever it was, ran over and just tackled the cop off the guy?
No, they tried.
The guy would have survived. The guy would have survived, and then that guy who attacked the cop would have been thrown in jail.
Maybe
Like,
might have been the victim.
Yeah, stop. There is the training. That guy was on that guy's neck for
8 minutes.
way too long. My God, there had to be a point where, like, you know, people in the background are saying it. The guy is saying it. You're still on his neck. Like what's the problem?
The root cause, in my opinion, has everything to do with the tactics and training that they're able to do. If that is a racism issue, let's take that one off the table. Like if he went out and said, hey, let's go kill some N's tonight, and this is what the end result was, then okay, that's a different issue. But I don't think that's what the intent was. I think whatever the intent was, it was the tactics and the behavior that he was trained to do, and it's not the right thing to do. I think we need to progress in the types of tactics and training that we need to do.
No, excuse me. I was in the military, and what that gentleman did was not tactical. I've also been arrested.
So where did he learn it from, Cynthia?
I think he did it because he wanted to.
So,
And
you think there's a racial element? Do you think there's a racial element?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Definitely.
Fair.
I can tell you, if that was my son as a white woman, Minneapolis would no longer be standing at this point in time, let alone trying to decide whether to arrest him or not. That place would have been burned to the fucking ground.
So it's fair you think it's racist, right? I'm not arguing that what you think isn't correct.
Mm-hmm.
There's no data to support that, but that is what you believe, and so I can't argue that. But if you exclude that, go ahead, Nadia, you're gonna say something.
If that was a white man saying I can't breathe, I mean, just like for real. If that was a white man saying that, he would have gotten up. He would have gotten up. He didn't give a damn because he was a black man.
Let me clear this up real quick.
Fair.
Let me clear this up real quick. All right, for one, there's plenty of videos with cops sticking their knees on people's necks. I just saw one recently where the cops that were in the tactical gear had his knee in somebody's neck, and the other officer had to pull his knee off of it and put it on his back. That's one.
Enough. That's enough.
Yeah, but also the second thing is white people are killed by police officers as well. And I don't know the data on how many are killed in what ways, because that doesn't really make the national news on such a level. So I don't know how it translates to just bad police tactics, but I'm not taking away the fact that black people are disproportionately killed by the police. What I'm saying is, I want to know how the white people are being killed by the police, and is it in such same fashions as it is with the black folks, and we just don't hear about it.
Javier, I don't have that particular data and how they're being killed, but if you go to FBI.gov and go to their statistics, you'll see that there were 12 million arrests in 19, about 12 million arrests. And you just round numbers, 65, 70% were black, 25% were, 65, 70% were white, 25% were black. Which, if you look at the population, there's a problem there. When there's only 12% of black people in the U.S. and you arrest 25%, there's a problem. But just take the population of arrested people, okay? It's the same percentage of the number of police that killed people. There was 1,000 people killed, plus or minus, but 1,000 people killed according to the statistics. About 65% of them were white and about 25% were black. So holistically across the U.S., it's about the same. So you can't conclude that there's some kind of racial bias there. However, you can do that if you go into city by city, which I think is what you should do with the data. But I'm not dismissing that. If you have a thought and a belief that it was racial, fine.
Facts don't care about feelings.
I don't know of any evidence that is, other than an implication of the pictorial view of a white man on a black. I get that. I get I get bringing those two together. I understand that piece of it. However, there is no data to suggest that the guy did it because he was black. Now, if you take that piece off the table for a second, there is a tactic on controlling and arresting people it's outdated. It's not progressive. And that type of reform needs to be front and center. That's what everybody should be protesting. That is what everybody should be saying. This is wrong. The method and way in which police are policing needs to be reformed. That's what I believe.
I'm with you there. Because if you stop police brutality, you save lives, not just black lives, you save white lives. And if you want black lives saved, then it's going to save white lives. You can't get around that. Police reform is what we should be aiming for. Now, of course, if it comes out that this guy did it for racial reasons, we should condemn that full out.
We got a whole different problem there. And I agree. And I think in that point, Nadia, and I'll be quiet here for a second, I think that if it comes out that this guy was intentional, this was a black man, I did not care about his life, and I don't care about black people, if that comes out in even just the subtlety then I think we've got an intersection of problems that's big.
I addressed that it was policing. Policing really needs to be reformed. I agree. I think it was the care that was racial, in my opinion.
Fair. That's fair.
Mentioned earlier, if it's been said during the act, get off of him, stop. You're hurting him. At some point, you have to click on your care. And for whatever reason, he stopped caring about his knee being in that guy's neck. It's more than apparent in more than one ways in different scenarios that race in those situations is an issue during it. Because I've seen videos with white cops with their knee on white men, and it's not that long, they're still brutal. They're brutal with white people, they're brutal. But the extent of, like you said, the statistics, I don't know the statistics, but that was ridiculous. That was a ridiculous amount of time for him to be on the neck, and some of the things that these officers do. Yes, media, we seen it in the media, but damn, like.
Cesare, I haven't heard from you in a minute, man. Anything to chime in on?
I got a lot to say. I'm just not sure where to come in. I just wanted to go back to that point of empowering people and developing the relationship that people have among each other. Having people having more respect for the police as well. Not being belligerent with the police. I know a lot of people do that. I don't know why they do that, but then the police kind of step up with their thing. I'm not trying to defend the police brutality here, but it's people kind of escalate that. With the riots going on, there's so much. People are creating a lot of problems for themselves, destroying their own city. I mean, like, what sense does that make? How does that help anybody? So there is a lot of bad logic on the side of the population too, but definitely the way that the police deals with people has to be reformed. I just to wrap up with the other point that I was making is we're trying to create a community, an environment that we're trying to grow where people actually get to know one another, and regardless of what their race is, regardless of where they come from, when you actually really empower the citizens, and really when you give democracy into the hands of the people, well, you don't necessarily want to be mistreating those people, because guess what? You might be trying to talk to them later. When you actually develop that citizen-to-citizen connection, I think people develop a much deeper appreciation for one another as people, not just as like, hey, that's just some group. I don't care what they say. They yell crazy things. We don't have to listen to them. But when people develop that culture of real democracy, then I think that also transfers into the culture and, the environment and the relationship. When police officers do democracy with their fellow citizens, it takes them out of that bubble of just working within their own environment. When people are able to do democracy with the officers, it also makes them more comfortable in confronting the police ideologically, knowing that you are discussing some issues with a police officer, but they're a police officer, but they're still just a citizen. It helps to equalize that, and it develops that respect. I mean, again, combine it with socioeconomic problems. When you do that, you can solve these things.
I think that's a good way to, end that off. I think we all had a chance to, address those issues and give our 2 cents, as they say. So the riots come up with one more issue with me, and what the hell happened to COVID-19? Like, where the hell is COVID-19? Is it boycotting?
It's wiping out the murder hornets for us real quick.
Well, yeah. COVID-19 has really started 2020 off kind of
We'll
crazy.
figure it out in 2 weeks. In 2 weeks, if the country goes back into oblivion, we'll know.
Hey, you got to give the rioters, the protesters, full props, man. I've seen a lot of people with masks on. And not just like the gas mask, like the real, the COVID-19 mask. Come on, you got to give them credit. They're out there protesting, rioting, and say, all right, we don't want the COVID. That's all right. I'm okay with that.
So we're going to tear some stuff up, but we're going to be safe while we're doing it.
Absolutely.
I think every criminal will continue to carry the COVID masks because, hey, COVID's never going away, and you got to stay safe, even when you're robbing grandma on the street or whatever. So,
right. And it just seems like everybody was like isolated. Everybody was just in the homes or, doing everything they can to keep 6 feet away from people. And then the riot started, and it's just like just the social distancing was just like, all right, we're gonna have to put you on the back burner for now. We got to go out here and handle some business. And like, where do y'all see COVID-19 going at this point?
I hope away. I hope it goes away. I hope we get everything back. I hope sports comes back. I know you don't care about sports, but I do, and I hope it all comes back. I think that heals the nation. We bring sports back.
Oh yeah, I see. Mark that got kicked out the house. He's sitting in the dark. So
can I ask Cesare something?
go ahead.
Make sure I don't know if I was clear in the understanding I grabbed from him. If he was saying that if people dealt with police officers in a better way than was that what he was saying?
He said he doesn't understand. Well, I'll let him speak for himself. Go ahead, Cesare.
that's a small piece of the issue. I'm just saying that, that it's part of a perspective that I think a lot of time people, they kind of push the limits of what they can do with the police. But I think police officers should always be working on de-escalating the situation. That their number one job should be to preserve life. Even at the cost of their own life. And I think that's why we should have respect for these people, is because they actually put themselves on the line, risking their lives for other people, even when those people might be, let's say, acting erratically. But then again, if they were doing that more, then we should be respecting them more. I don't know. It's like, I'm saying we should be trying to work to meet kind of closer together. Each side should do a little bit more.
I asked for your understanding on that because I've been in situations where I've been approached by officers that literally use their pride when talking to you. And I think as human beings, we can sense certain character traits being used in communication. And I can say, as a well-behaved Black individual, for lack of a better way to say that when I'm approached by officers that use that tactic, I'm still, my buttons are pushed. And there are situations where your buttons are pushed and you have to remain humble because of how they're dealing with you. And then there are situations where I've been approached by officers that treat you like a human being. They talk to you like, I'm human, you're human. This is my job, only my job. And I'm just coming here to, solve whatever the issue is. And if I have to take someone in, I have to take someone in. But at the bottom of it, there's an issue. 911 was called. I'm here to help. And then there's officers that stop you, and they stopping you for a tail light, but they act like they're stopping you for another reason, or they call 7 other officers, and that puts anybody, I'm not sure if you had these experiences, but it puts anybody in like a timid situation. We already have the media portraying that officers are killing Black people. So when we are pulled over and approached dramatically, it puts anybody on edge. It puts anybody in the defense mode. It makes anybody feel unsafe. And I believe that police officers, goes back to what we were talking about earlier, are supposed to protect and serve. If there's an issue, you serve the issue. If there's an issue, you protect me from the issue or whatever. You figure out what's going on, but you don't intimidate me with your power. Don't intimidate me with your badge. Don't intimidate me with your handcuffs and your lights when you're stopping me. If I'm doing something wrong, allow me to know. If I don't follow suit, treat me like a human first. And if I don't follow suit, give me my ticket. Arrest me. Don't beat my ass because I called you out your name because you intimidated me and made me feel. Don't beat my ass because I'm ignorant. Don't beat my ass because I say some shit. Don't
Nadia,
treat me as of a human.
Let's to Cesari's point, and I think you're making a very valid point. But also, we have to account for those situations where officers are being the nice guy, and the person that they're dealing with is being a complete jackass. You know?
Javier, all due respect, I think you missed a point of Nadia, and I know she's your friend, but I did not hear that. I didn't hear the point she, I think, was making, and Nadia, you can tell me to be quiet here, and Javier, if we need to move on, that's fine. But I think the point she's making is those police officers, what she's describing is exactly what they need to be trained on. How to treat people of different ethnicities, of different backgrounds. How should you treat people as people? And I think that is where she was coming from. I agree with you. You still have to deal with belligerent assholes. You still have to deal with the guy who just says, F you, I'm coming at you. You still have to deal with that. But the officer should be trained. If you treat the person that you're pulling over with respect, I think you get what Nadia is talking about. I could be wrong, Nadia, but I think that's where you were coming from. I don't think you were going down a path that Javier was going down, which is, well, how do you deal with these other people? You have to learn how to treat with those people as well. That's a training.
I completely agree. And there are people who, my sister is one of them. As soon as one stops, ready. But like you said, you have to be able, as an officer, knowing your power, you have to be able to handle your power and not, what's the word I'm looking for? Not take that, because now you're painting a picture for the children growing up on police officers in general, especially when they're in the vehicle that you're pulling over. Now they don't like cops. Now they don't want to be cops. Now we don't have any cops. Or anything can result from the way these officers are portraying themselves as officers.
Yeah, and I was trying to make the point. Like I said, your points were completely valid. Scott, I agree with you. I agree with you as well, Nadia. I was just pointing out the simple fact that there's something psychological going on here with a lot of police officers.
Yeah.
Where
Can I talk to that real quick?
Yeah, go ahead, Mark. Jump
So
in.
there was, I worked in some corporations, and some of these corporations that I worked for had bosses that were just unruly. So one of my relatives sent me a paper about the psychosis that people go through when they're given power. Now, when they're given power, it's like a drug. It's like a real drug, more powerful than drugs you might find out wherever you might, be looking for them. And it's not always that these people were born this way and then they come up this way. This study that I read, it followed people like the people that turn and become power-hungry maniacs aren't always, in order for them to get to those higher positions, they did not get there by being an asshole the entire time. They were good people, and they have real personability skills that have been able to get them to the positions they got. And when they got that power, it flipped on them, and they don't always know what's going on themselves. And I think that, like, there are way too many people out there that have power that do not deserve it. And they may have deserved to get to that position, but that doesn't mean they know how to handle the power that they have. And I think that is what we're seeing.
Yeah, I think Cynthia was telling me it's the Stanford experiment. They even have a movie out called The Experiment that actually goes through that process. But what I was trying to touch on is to push back a little bit to defend police officers. We're talking about a group of people who spend majority of their day on their toes. I'm talking about showing up, watching, showing up to scenes where men have just beat their wives, bloody, people who lives are on the line continuously. Just imagine psychologically always feeling like you could die at any given time, that this next situation that you're walking in could be your last. These people see and experience things that alter them in such a way that we have to account for that. It can't just be training. There has to be some kind of therapy there. There has to be some kind of mental therapy for the.
I have a friend who's a cop, and he was a cop for maybe a year and a half. And one night he decided he was sick and he took the night off. The officer that took his spot had a house call, regular house call, knocked on the door. They opened the door and the guy blew him away right there. Like,
can I talk without talking over anybody else?
that was my point. My point was kind of trying to compliment Javier's a little bit about being on the toes, but go ahead.
Yes, first, Scott, I'm sorry. I get very passionate. Like, I don't get angry, but I get very, I'm excitable. So please don't take me getting passionate as aggression toward you. Javier, yes, absolutely. That was actually a point I was going to bring up. Like these cops come in contact on a daily basis with the worst of humanity and fear for their life at the same time. And they also don't have really proper training to go with that. And the real problem, as I mentioned before, with the governance, we had 50 years to, like in the 60s, apparently we all collectively decided that we were all equal beings, and yet nothing else changed. And you can't leave a new baby in an old environment and expect him to grow up in it differently. You just can't.
Anybody want to add to that didn't?
I would just, yeah. So I would just add that you made a comment. I don't know if you meant it this way. You said majority of their time they're in on the toes situation. I would argue that that's not majority of the time. I think it does happen, but I don't think it's majority of the time.
Okay, that could be correct. Yeah,
I think
it might be the area that they're policing in. Some areas you might have to be on your toes.
I'm not saying they don't. There may be nights where 8 hours I'm always on my toes. My uncle was a cop in New Orleans, and just some of the stories that he told, it wasn't that situation. Maybe it's his own particular one, but my point is, and I think where Nadia and I were alignment on, and Nadia, if I'm speaking for you, just say, no, Scott, that's not what I mean. But the training is so important. The training about how to handle these different situations is so important, I think, for police brutality. I think the hiring of a police officer needs more scrutiny. It needs background checks. If you have a history and a disposition of domestic violence, you're probably not going to be a police officer. I don't know if I'd have you on my force. If you had a history of anger, if you had a history of these different things that maybe you didn't get reconciled for, you didn't get therapy for. I want the police officers that Nadia kind of described that said, listen, I'm here, I'm trying to do my job, I'm trying to solve this problem, I need your help. What about this, and this? And then you come to some kind of conclusion, and maybe you go to jail, maybe you don't, but it's very amicable. It's very like, here's my job, I want to do it and go home. But the confrontation, the violence begets violence, the confrontation begets confrontation. That needs to be de-escalated. That needs to be brought down. They need to know how to do that. I don't think the
They
cop. Go ahead.
They I'm sorry, but I had to get it in. They get the opportunity to. I was in a police officer academy. I got out of high school. I didn't know what I wanted to do, and I knew I wanted to be in some kind of law, criminal justice, and I tried to take the easy way. And I went straight into basic law, criminal justice, and into the post academy, peace officer academy. And they get the opportunity in post to get to know the people that are going to be officers. I was in class in the post academy with officers that are now officers that I knew were going to be assholes. They had racial conversations, or they had asshole conversations, or they were, you get to know these personalities. But what happens is they're meeting a quota for how many officers they need in the city. They're hiring people.
That's not acceptable. That's not acceptable.
If my background check, I could have been a criminal. I could have stolen all of Walmart and Kroger and never gotten caught. But if my background check was clear and any of the qualifications were met, I was there. I was a police officer.
Nadia, that's not acceptable. I work in corporate America, and when we hire people, if they're not the best, then we're not going to be the best. So if you have a deficiency, I can't have you.
Yeah,
I can develop you, but if I'm going to be the best, I got to hire the best. And if I have these deficiencies in a police officer, I can't hire you. Can't be part of my course.
I think what she's trying to say is crime. Look, evil doesn't sleep. People are going to be committing crimes, and police are already having such a hard time getting people to sign up for the police academies. So they're getting the pick of the litter because nobody wants to be a police officer. So they're wrestling between needing police officers to stop crimes and also trying to find the best people they can. And what do you do in a situation like that, Scott? What do you do? You have to. It's kind of like. It's
so
kind of
Javier,
like. Go ahead.
Just validate with me, if you don't mind. How do you know there's a shortage of police officers?
From what I've been hearing, now I can find the studies, but
I was going to look as well. I don't know that. And if there is a shortage, then you're going to get a lower quality police officer because there's a lower labor market. I mean, this goes back to capitalism. I know you don't want to go on that for this tonight, but if there's a shortage, then yeah, you have to. Unfortunately, I think there should be some standards in place. But yeah, if there's a shortage, that may be the case. I don't know if there is.
It may vary depending on the city, from city to city. So I know in my city, the police, the mayor was just saying that they're really desperate for police officers, and if you want to make change, please sign up for the police academy. So
yeah, 150 slots open.
Yeah,
so then you got to pay them more. Then we have to pay them more. I mean, it's a supply demand thing and a wage labor thing, and if that's what it takes, if that's the reform we need, is to put more money into so that good people want to be police officers. That's a pretty damn easy problem when you just threw $5 trillion into the economy to solve for some kind of disease that apparently is gone now because you're out there protesting. Just to piggyback with you.
Yeah, our society has a lot of things backers. Like Cynthia was just telling me about teaching. She said that even we have that problem with teaching. But we're going to have to wrap this up, folks. I think this was a great conversation. I'll let each one of you say your goodbyes, plug yourself, or say anything that you want at the last minute, and go for it. We're going to do it in the same order we introduced ourselves in. So, Cynthia?
Love, gratitude. Please remember, I'm suggesting myself as president. And man, I hope we get to talk again. This was outstanding. Thank you so much. I'm so grateful for this conversation and for all of your beautiful faces. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Cynthia. Nadia?
I want to piggyback off of something Cynthia said earlier. I'm not aggressive. I'm very passionate. It comes off as aggression. But yeah, I hope we can do this soon. I hope you guys will have me again. And thanks for hearing me out.
All right. Next up is Mark.
Thanks for having me, guys. It was a lot of fun. It's really good to actually have put a face to some words and names and stuff. I'm just here to learn, and I appreciate being included. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mark. Scott?
Yeah, thank you, Javier. Javier, this is it's good. Good to meet you finally, and some of these other folks. So thank you very much for including me, and I hope to get to do it again.
You've been great, Scott. Thank you so much. Cesare?
Thank you for having me, and I invite all of y'all to participate in our citizen assemblies where people deliberate all kinds of ideas and learn from one another, and we treat each other as equals because we are. Our system makes everyone equal. It gives everyone equal power. So let's have fun with that.
All right.
Look us up, Citizen Assembly on Facebook.
All right.
Citizen
All
Assembly.
right. Igor, check them out. Thank y'all so much. I had a great conversation. I'm not missing anybody, right?
I just wanted to say one more thing. I'm trying to organize a nationwide protest for Juneteenth.
Okay. So how can people find out about that?
They can come to International Logic Party USA on Facebook, or they can meet me at any meeting with Agora.
All right. Thank you, Javi Lobby. I really appreciate it. This is the first for me. So I hope y'all enjoyed this conversation when y'all hear it on the channel. And they came, they heard, they saw. Now they can run. Tell them we all said it. And if they ask us by name, make sure you say it twice. This is the Javier Javier Show.